Good afternoon and welcome into Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Ballybet, a sports betting partner of your Cleveland Browns, now live in Ohio. Bo Bishop still on location in Hawaii, but we are joined by the voice of the Cleveland Browns, Jim Donovan. What a treat. Great to see you. How you doing?
Great to see you. Yeah, it's great. I'm good. Everything is good.
You look great. The locks are flowing.
Unbelievable. And they came back very curly.
Yeah, you got a nice little wave.
I know, wavy, yeah. I was a little bit defensive about it, like when it happened, and then people said to me, hey, you know what? People in New York pay top bucks to get that.
They do. That's right. It's a hot
and remember,
commodity.
I married my barber, so I mean, she said to me, "Hey, that's
a new adventure for her.
That looks good, and it does. It feels good. Yeah.
Spicing it up,
right?
Spicing up. So obviously, a lot's happened since you and I have last been together.
Wow.
But I would say a lot's happened in the last 24 hours.
It has
as
Man,
well.
So
I'll just open it up to you. What do you want to talk about, Jim?
I would say that the Browns made as much news, if not the most news, coming out of the owners' meetings. It's talking about new contracts coming up, very deservedly so, for general manager and head coach. I love them both. They've done an amazing job. What a great team. When you consider the state of things when they got put together and how they got put together and what they've done, bravo to the two of them. Can't wish them any better luck than they've had so far, and hopefully in the future. But the stadium thing is really hot.
Sure.
And I think that what I heard yesterday made a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. It really does. With what Cleveland Browns Stadium is, where it is, where the city is, where the Browns are. Wow. It's pretty exciting when you start to put the pieces to the puzzle together. And I think what I pick up is that they want to start putting the pieces to the puzzle together. Yeah. I mean, this business of saying, all right, we're going to wait for a proposal from you, and, we're going to wait for then we'll react to that. I think the waiting game is exactly that. And, Nathan, let me tell you, the waiting game has gone on for decades down on that lakefront.
Oh, yeah.
It's decades of waiting to see how that's going to be developed, and can it be developed, and what's the best way to develop it. And when I drive by it, and I'm in there every day downtown, I just see the same thing down there.
You don't see a whole lot.
It's not developed.
No, it is not developed. And obviously, look, this is going to be probably the biggest non-on-the-field issue around this team until there is an announcement one day that this is the path. Yeah. Here's what we're doing.
Yeah, and there's a shovel being put into the ground.
Absolutely. Because you think if it's a new stadium, you're looking at what, 2029, 2030 would probably be the first time that you could get in there?
2029.
Yeah,
I would think 2029. Yeah.
Would make a lot of sense. So you kind of want to have that announced. And, I am well on the record for years and years. I would love to have a dome for the Cleveland Browns. I just think not only does it allow you to control the environment, which I think is a very, very good thing. And I know some people would say traditionalists, not – you're taking football weather out of it. I'm fine with that. If I put together the best team, I want to eliminate variables, and I want to focus on the talent I've got. And the second part is we do live in Cleveland, and so you have games in December that can be very important games that might not be as well attended just due to the nature of the weather.
So I was on the other side for many, many a year and saying, hey, no. We live in Cleveland. This is who we are. And, we play in the elements and we stay outside. I was all about that.
Yeah.
I'm all about not putting a logo on the helmet and all that kind of stuff. I love that. I love that they went back to their old uniforms, and I love when they do it. And I loved how they looked the night of the Jets game. But I want to tell you, the day that we did that Christmas Eve game against the New Orleans Saints, and it was so cold, I completely flipped. Coupled with that was the beauty when 3 years ago we were in Minneapolis and the Browns played the Vikings. That to me was nirvana. Now I have not been to the Raiders Stadium. We haven't played the Raiders. And we have been to SoFi, and I loved it, and it was good. But that Minnesota Stadium was, I'm saying,
football heaven.
That was beautiful. I mean, it was beautiful. So I have changed a great deal. Even the night of the Jets game, an important game, and all of a sudden that rain came in. It wasn't game altering, but you're right. We're playing in big games now. We're a good football team that has high expectations. Why not? Why let's play and let's play in an environment that is controlled, and then let's control what we can control, the football part of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. And I think I'm with you in the sense that when we went to Minnesota, that really kind of changed my whole perspective because it didn't feel big. It felt intimate. You had all that natural light. You could tell that they were able to create an unbelievable home field advantage for themselves.
True.
The snow dropping, all of it. And I said to myself, this is what we have to have. And if you remember that year, we went from Minnesota right to SoFi. That was week 4 were the Vikings, and week 5 was that crazy game against the Chargers.
That's right, yeah.
And SoFi is very impressive, and it is an incredible place to take in a big event. But it feels like not any other dome, but it feels like most of the other just big, cavernous, monstrous domes, whereas there was something special about Minnesota. And I think if we could somehow create our version, a Cleveland version of that, I think you would have everything you want. And not to mention, we're talking about from purely Brown standpoint, but I think if you talk about it from let's talk a city, county, region, state standpoint, all of a sudden you have a venue that can host big events. It would be, in my mind, you'd think there'd be a Buckeyes game there once a year. There could have Big Ten championships there. You could have Super Bowl. You can have anything. WrestleManias. We're having SummerSlam this year. I mean, you can have massive money-generating events that would be happening all the time.
Yeah, and on that point, let me make a point because I was thinking about this last night when this really started to bubble and break from Orlando. The thing is that you can build it, okay, and if you have it, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get all of those events.
Sure.
Okay? But you have a much better chance. I mean, suddenly you're on the A-list.
It's not non-zero.
Yeah, you're going to get the concerts that everybody's getting, and you keep saying, wait a minute, we're the rock and roll capital of the world. Why aren't we getting these events? Well, it's because we lack a venue like the events that these artists are going to in other cities. But here's the thing. If you build it, it's going to be beautiful, no doubt about it, and you'll have football in there. But you want everything else. And the Haslams pointed that out yesterday. 12 events a year, that's not getting the job done. And they're trying to put other events in there.
Sure.
Rod Stewart, Billy Joel. And
one night only.
Yeah, okay. Here's the thing, though. Now you've got to sell the city, okay? And the city is very sellable. And I'll tell you why. Because, Nathan, when the Republican National Convention came in here and there were all kinds of concerns about could Cleveland handle that safety-wise, entertainment-wise, hotel accommodations, well, the hotels went up. The safety was perfect, okay? Everybody left town and really enjoyed it, okay? The women's Final Four is coming up in a couple of weeks here, and that will be handled very, very well. When we held the draft, in a very, very difficult time to hold the draft because COVID was still around and the NFL was just starting to come outdoors again. And here we were, we took it on and did a great job with it. Cleveland has sold itself that now you
100%.
You put a venue here and what Cleveland can do and make it a really comfortable, enjoyable time coming here. Yeah, you are going to get that list that you just went down. Yeah. We are right back in the game, a game that we haven't been able to compete in because of a lack of a venue.
It's exactly right. Final Four would be another thing you could add to it. And a lot of these things happen in
Indianapolis.
Indianapolis.
Now, that's my message, and I endorse it.
I endorse your message as well. But a lot of these things happen in Indianapolis.
Absolutely.
And there's no reason they certainly couldn't happen here in Cleveland, Ohio.
Right.
And I think that's kind of, the bigger picture of it is from a football standpoint. I think there are reasons for it. I certainly understand the people that like to be in the cold and think that there is some toughness to that. But at the same time, you see it around the league. They're nice. We travel to every stadium in the league, and there is a big difference sometimes between a game that's played outdoors, given some maybe unforeseen event, and games that are played indoors.
That Christmas Eve game was painful, and I know there was a holiday, and Christmas was the next day, obviously. So that might have kept people away. I know that we weren't in the playoff chase at that particular point in time. But the fact of the matter is that became a game where really you couldn't go to. You couldn't go to. That weather was so, and you're feet away from a Great Lake, okay?
Yes.
And that weather was painful. I mean the walk from where we park, which is pretty close, okay? The walk just across the street to get inside the stadium was painful.
Yeah.
And that's when I completely reversed and went, absolutely, I'm in. No, I don't care where you put it. Build it.
What do you make of kind of the way that this is played out? And it feels, I think if you're kind of following, not really the breadcrumbs, but if you go back to the Greenbrier, which is kind of the first time that the Haslams kind of said, look, maybe it is in Cleveland. We are absolutely staying in Northeast Ohio, that you thought, okay, maybe it's possible. And here we are not even a year later, and this feels certainly more fleshed out. We had the report of the tract of land that was purchased where there could be, by the way, more hotels and restaurants and office buildings and parking and all of these things. It does feel like it's accelerated somewhat rapidly, and it feels like, that's probably a path that you could see yourself headed down soon.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I really do. I agree with really everything that they said yesterday. I mean, I read it back. I listened to it, but I read it back in the articles that the local beat writers, printed as being down there and being the questioners to the Haslam's. But everything made sense. Everything made sense. I mean, the 12 events a year, that doesn't cut it. The fact that the lakefront is definitely should be developed and could be developed without a football stadium there, and maybe should be developed that way. And I understand everything that's going on, but I think this is the way of the NFL. I mean, the NFL moves very, very quickly, and it really lives up to the statement that you got to keep up with the Joneses. And I mean, the Joneses in Dallas, you got to keep up with them, but everybody is doing that. This is going to happen around the league. Now, back when when it was going on in a different way, where you weren't building indoor stadiums, everybody wanted a new stadium, just a new stadium, a nice facility. I mean, you take a look at New England. I mean, that was a terrible stadium that they had there, and then Gillette Stadium is built, and they have Patriot Place all around it: restaurants, bars, retail, things like that, souvenir shops, great team shops, a Hall of Fame that the Patriots have. I mean, the Browns could easily easily do that. So I really think that it was very exciting what I heard from Orlando. And I understand it. And I would like them – I think they're saying to the city, hey, listen, we understand, okay, but you have to understand we want a new place.
Right.
Yeah, we want to be we want to make the Cleveland Browns a very, very special place to play for our fans and for us.
Right, and attractive for, as you mentioned earlier, all the different opportunities and events that would come with that type of a stadium, and not to mention the opportunities for development. And Cleveland Brown Stadium is awesome. It is also, we know it's tough to get in and out of.
It is.
You are there, you're not going to be able to spring up a bunch of developments around it. The land is very limited. Yeah. And so when you're trying to do that, and what I read yesterday, they said it would be $1 billion to kind of renovate that stadium, which feels like a lot.
Yeah. I just don't know what they could do. I understand you throw that, that total out, $1 billion. I don't know if you could bring the best people from HGTV in. And really, what would you do? We're in it a lot, okay? And they've redone it a few times.
Sure.
I mean, what are you going to have, the biggest scoreboard in the world? I mean, is that going to do it? I mean, that doesn't enhance it.
To me, it would
the thing is, Nathan, that people around Cleveland, and I totally get it, and Browns fans certainly, because it really hits home with them. When you start talking about stadiums and things like that, it's a very sensitive issue.
Yeah.
Because if Art Modell had just spoken up and said, this is what I want, but he didn't, okay? Now, they're speaking up. I mean, the Haslams are speaking up and saying, hey, listen, this is what we're kind of looking at. But he didn't do that, okay? I don't know why. He wanted a new place, but really more so he didn't want the Indians to have a new place. And the Cavs were just a throw-in at that time, because the Cavs had a really nice place out in Richfield at the Coliseum. But that's why I think that's going to be the resistance is, okay, we're moving. It's only a few miles, but they're moving, okay? And people get nervous about that. But, I mean, they have steadfastly said this is just a location, but within the region. I mean, very much within the region.
Closer to this facility?
Yeah.
That is the Cleveland Hopkins International Airport. It would be in incredible proximity to the Cleveland Airport. So, yes, it is still very much it would be in the greater Cleveland area if they do go there. I hope that it's one of those things that can be a resolution can become too quickly, a path can be forged, and then I think by the time that you would, if it is in fact to go build a dome, by the time you get there, I think everybody's going to be pretty excited.
Oh, I think they should be. The next step will be, after this yesterday, what is the city going to respond and say? okay, because it's time to really come up with a plan to say, all right, we have a plan to keep you or to, keep you in downtown Cleveland because it's important for us to have you. Totally get that. But can they logistically do it? I just don't know if the footprint is expansive enough down there to come up with that kind of a facility.
Yeah. That's
no blame.
No,
that's
exactly.
That's
just the reality.
That's the geography.
Yeah, that's just the reality of it, and that's the situation down there. Well, you've heard us talk about it a little bit, and I'm sure we will talk about it a little more. But coming up next, we will actually hear from Browns owners Jimmy and Dee Haslam. They're meeting with the beat writers yesterday at the NFL owners meetings in Florida, so you can hear it right from them as they talk about obviously what's happening with Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski, talking about Nick Chubb, as well as the stadium and what that means in the Cleveland Lakefront, how important it is to them and to this community. Nathan Zagura and the voice here, Cleveland Browns, Jim Donovan, off and running here. Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Ballybet, sports betting partner of your Cleveland Browns, now live in Ohio. The Rolling Stones Hackney Diamonds Tour is on Saturday, June 15th at Cleveland Browns Stadium. Tickets are on sale right now. Visit clevelandbrownsstadium.com/Rolling Stones for more information. Nathan Zagura, the voice of the Browns, Jim Donovan with you. All right, let's take a listen to some of the highlights from Browns owners Jimmy and Dee Haslam and their meeting with the beat writers yesterday at the NFL owner meetings in Florida. Number one, Jimmy and Dee saying where things stand as it pertains to stadium talks.
I mean, we're still, evaluating all our options. So I'd say we've, lots of due diligence, lots of conversations, but we're still going through the process. So not much different than February.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand the goal is to come up with the best experience we can for our fans. And yet it still has to make sense financially. And so the balancing those two things is something we're working carefully on and putting a tremendous amount of effort into.
So this is a major undertaking, and I think everybody would understand that this is a major undertaking, and there are going to have to be a lot of different funding partners and a lot of plans that go into making this go. And I think it's clear that they are certainly in that diligence phase and doing everything they can to get the right plan.
Now, at a much smaller scale, because it's a much smaller venue, but they really did build a beautiful stadium in Columbus for the Columbus Crew.
Yes.
I mean, perfect for that market, more so even perfect for that sport and that league. I mean, that's what they want in that league, okay? And it's a gorgeous facility. And so you say, hey, hey, they've got a nice touch. They have a nice touch.
Yeah, right.
Let's go bigger.
That's right. This time, same thing, only bigger, much bigger, and with a roof. All right, here's Jimmy Haslam talking about the two options for when it comes to the stadium.
I think it's fair to say and give us, as I always tell when I ask people a question that's way out, Zach, get right to change your mind, okay, to qualify just a little bit, that in all likelihood we're either going to remodel on the lakefront with an extensive remodel or build a new stadium, which would be domed. Because it'll give, if we did go the dome route, and I'm not saying we're doing that versus remodeling where we are now, but it could be used more than 10 or 12 times a year. Which you all understand.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's the big thing.
Yes.
You would have a very functioning, attractive venue that would bring in a great deal of entertainment, excitement, and money. Money. A lot of money.
A lot of money.
A lot of money.
That's right.
I mean, that's what it is. I mean,
yes.
Really, when you think about it, if you just go down to what is, what's prudent, And it's no fault of any city, any team, any franchise. But if you just have a stadium sitting there, a football stadium, you're not talking about Progressive Field that has 80-some-odd dates and maybe more if they make the playoffs, and the Cavs who have 40-some-odd dates plus and more. Hopefully postseason. A football stadium at its bare minimum, 10, 12 games. And that's without anything coming in there. And it just sits there.
Well, and think about so our season ended early in January.
Yeah.
There you can't have any events at the stadium.
No.
We're just talking about the Rolling Stones coming in June. You've got SummerSlam in August, and then you've got Billy and Rod in September. But there's a pretty short window that you can actually do things in the stadium at all.
Yeah,
and so now the season could be over, and you could have events starting, after the Super Bowl. As soon as the Super Bowl ended, we could start having a bunch of events.
Right. You can only do the outdoor hockey game a couple of times, and it was great. I was there. It was a great event. But you're right. You're very, very limited. It is what it is.
It's right, and I think that's kind of the realization that people have, and people who go to the game. And I can't tell you how many times where you have somebody say, it's great to go to the game. I love being there, but it's cold and it's windy, and take the season opener. That was a brutal game for the fans.
Perfect example. Yeah,
for the fans in the stands, just getting drizzled on basically
the whole game
for 3 hours is not pleasant.
Yeah, was it waterboarding? No, but it was a steady drizzle.
If we had lost, it might have been waterboarding, but fortunately we won.
That's right. I know that defense came to play. Thank heavens. But you're right. It's definitely like that. A while back, you may remember this. The Indians came up with the idea that they wanted to try and get more revenue because their attendance had really dipped.
Sure.
Because they weren't winning at that point in time. It was a rebuild for them. And remember, they turned Jacobs Field, Progressive Field, into like a winter wonderland. They had skating. They had a slide. They had all these things. And it, you say, well, that would be great, but it financially bombed.
Probably. It's a big investment.
Yeah, and you're still outdoors. You're still outdoors. The other thing, what do you think about this? The NFL combats this, too. And they combat that the home experience has become so good. the Red Zone channel,
was just saying,
things
right.
like that. And the fact that people have these entertainment centers galore in their homes now, that they battle the fact that, okay, what can we do to make the stadium experience really good? Because a lot of people might say, well, you know what? I'm going to stay at home. I mean, I love the Browns. I'm going to root for them. I'm going to root for them in Solon.
Yes. Listen, a lot of people very close to me say that, many Solon residents. But you're right. You have it is not crazy to think that somebody would have an 80-plus inch television in their house with HD, and they get to sit on their couch and they get to have their food, their drink, whatever. And so you have to create a compelling reason to go. And one reason that is compelling to not go at times is I don't want to get rained on. I don't want to freeze, all of those things. And you're saying, listen, it's going to be 70 degrees. Every single time you come into the stadium, it's going to be perfect.
Yeah.
No temperature, as my wife likes to call it. It'll be no
No
temperature.
temperature.
No temperature whatsoever. So, yeah, you are combating that. And I think that is a big part of it. And that's why, to me, when you think about hearing in Chicago or Buffalo that they want to build, but they are thinking about not doing domes, it feels crazy to me, especially with all the things Buffalo has dealt with. Now, not to say if there was a snow of that magnitude that they would be able to clean the roads, but at least you wouldn't be shoveling out stadiums.
Right. Yeah, which in the last couple of years they have been doing, like the last 3.
Every year.
I mean, we had to go to Detroit to play them.
Right.
Right.
In a dome. How about that?
In a beautiful dome. A beautiful dome.
How about that? All right, here is Dee Haslam now. Her point is about the team exploring all of its options.
Well, I think we looked at, can we solve all the issues on the waterfront for our fans? I mean, it's hard to get into, it's hard to get out of, it's, we have no parking, I think that was something really important for us, is how we solve those issues. And then when you start thinking about what Cleveland can be and what the vision for this city is, I think we underestimate what a great place it is. And I think there's an opportunity here to perhaps build a dome stadium that could transform our area. So that's something exciting to think about. We're looking at both options. It is not one option is above the other. But I do think that Cleveland deserves to be thought of as this evolving, forward-thinking, creative city, as opposed to, not thinking big. I think there's opportunity here.
And that's part of it, right? You can't solve all of the problems down there. And I think that is a big part of what they're thinking with.
And it is really difficult. Now, we get to the stadium very early for a home game.
Thank goodness.
True. We get to the stadium very early, but those roads get shut down at 11 a.m., I think. Okay?
And it's even earlier now.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Well, there you have it. I mean, let's say, round it off and say 11 o'clock in the morning, those roads are shut off. So the access to being able to get to the stadium by vehicle now is you're way back in the upper regions of downtown.
And it's a one-lane road on South Marginal.
That's right. And she's right. I mean, what she's saying, what they said yesterday is they're not slamming Cleveland. They're not slamming the city government. I mean, they're just saying, hey, it is what it is. It's a very difficult place to get to. It's very congested. You're taking 70,000 people, 72, whatever the capacity number is, and they're funneling in that very, very tight space to get downtown by foot and by car. I mean, it's a tricky place.
There are sometimes people get mad when you point out what is just an obvious truth, because it might not be fun to say out loud, but it is tough. The ingress and egress is very tough. You are very right. We get there before anything happens, but when we leave after a game, and I'm usually there over an hour after the game.
Yeah, I'm with you, right? I mean, we're on the field doing our things, and
it's still not easy to get out, and we're an hour after the fact.
Right. Yeah.
So
right.
there are definitely some challenges, and I think people should kind of in their mind's eye think about, if you had a spot where they had improved ingress, egress, you'd have more parking kind of there. You'd have restaurants. You could have hotels. I mean, you imagine that large tract of a land. There's going to be development, as you talked about with Gillette Stadium and Patriot Place and all of that. So it could be a completely different atmosphere. You might say, after a game, I'm going to go walk over to here.
Well, I think you would. Yeah,
and hang out for a while and just enjoy yourself. Yeah. So it is very different, and there are just constraints when one side of it is water. We're not building out on the water.
Nathan, the other thing, it is really, it's a different state down there. Why? Because they're good. on the field. They're good. The games are great. You don't want to leave early. I mean, when they were in the 1-15 and the 0-16 years, yeah, people were out of there. Yeah, so it wasn't that difficult to get out of there because the game was over. It wasn't competitive. But, I mean, people are in there now. I mean, you want to be in there right to the last second. You better be in there right to the last second. You can queue up the Bears game. You can queue up, and you want to be part of an exciting day. Queue up the Jets night on that Thursday night. It's a different mood down there right now. This is a good team. They're going to be playing in big games, and you're right. The calendar turns, the weather turns here deep into the winter, and why not? Yeah.
I remember our Thursday night, the clincher. After we won, and we all stayed there for a while afterwards because it was such a euphoric thing. And then I went actually to go meet the Hoff, and Andrew Siciliano was in town, and we went to go have a drink down on, what is it, East 9th or East 6th? What's the street? Or West 6th? West 6th.
West 6th.
Yep. Which I could have walked to in probably 10, 15 minutes.
Sure, yeah, 10 minutes. Yeah.
10 minutes. Yeah. Well, it took me about an hour by car to get there because of everything that was closed everywhere, and I had to go all the way up here and then all the way over there, and then I'm like, wait a second, what? And the GPSs don't know, and we're so reliant on our GPSs now. They have no idea what's closed, what's open. So, yeah, and we're going to be playing more night games, I have a feeling. Yeah. I think this is going to be a team that's going to be a little bit more prime time, and if we have another successful season, that's only going to manifest itself even more. D. Haslam, did I do the Lakefront one yet about – no, okay. D. Haslam also talked about the fact that the lakefront here in Cleveland is important whether the stadium's there or not. And as you talked about earlier, potentially it opens things up for actual development there if it were not.
So, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the lakefront still is a great piece of property. And it would be a great place for people to live. I mean, it could be absolutely amazing. So regardless of what happens, the lakefront needs to happen. It's really critical to our community. So I think there's a lot of great plans for downtown. I'm personally really excited. I work on the partnership, and that's one of the main things we talk about is how important it is.
All right, and she's right. It is an important part, and it's something that will be, I think, essential to Cleveland's downtown continuing to thrive into the future. So we've talked a little bit about the stadium. Jimmy and Dee have talked a little about the stadium. Let's talk a little bit about football now, and let's start with extending our general manager who's done a great job and our head coach who's been, no big deal, 2-time coach of the year in 4 years. The Browns making 2 playoff trips under Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski. Here's Jimmy Haslam.
I'll just say this. We're in the process of working through things so that Kevin and Andrew would be with us for an extended period of time.
Good.
Short and sweet. Good. Yes. Yeah. I kind of read it, and I'm curious your take, and we've talked about all the things that have happened, that it's such a minor thing to note that Mike Vrabel is, and it's not a minor thing at all, but that Mike Vrabel is in the building working with not only Kevin Stefanski as kind of a consultant, but also working with Andrew Berry as well. And I remember when I read that, I said to myself, well, Kevin Stefanski knows he's getting an extension because Mike Vrabel, you don't just bring a guy like that in the building to be waiting in the wings unless you know he's not waiting for me.
Right. No doubt about it. I mean, the team of Berry and Stefanski, perfect. I mean, they're in sync and have been since they've gotten here. It's amazing because they both really are kind of the same. They don't take any applause, any personal applause, and they both deserve it. I mean, they dish it out a great deal. They defer to the player. If the situation is bumpy, like it was with the OBJ Mayfield situation for Andrew Berry. And if it's bumpy, certainly when Deshaun Watson arrived and how they were going to have to navigate through that, I mean, they really take it upon themselves. I mean, Kevin's answer so many times and not too many times, and that's why he's winning and he's got the extension coming, thank Kevin's. But when they do lose, he right away says, well, I have to do a better job. I have to give them a better play. We need to, that's on me. It always is on them when it's a little bumpy, but I think they've just been totally in sync. Now, the Vrabel thing, I'm just amazed he didn't get another head coaching job. Nathan, during the summer when he was installed into the New England Patriots Hall of Fame, he went to the celebration in Foxborough, which is a big thing back there. I mean, they have a great Hall of Fame, and they have a great tradition. And I was watching him, figuring that, and remember, their season was, not going to go well. And I was watching him, and I just said to myself, wow, probably perfect fit there to take over when
Sure.
Bill Belichick, when that runs out, which it eventually did, because it just seemed as though he was so loved and revered the way he played back there.
And he loved that organization.
He did love that organization. He loved that owner. But I'm just amazed, first of all, that he didn't get a head coaching job and that he's not a head coach. But it's
Or that
great
he
to
got
have
fired.
him home. Yeah. I mean,
Supposedly, that speech you're referencing had something to do with it, that the way he was so effusive in his praise of the Patriots organization and owner Bob Kraft
did not sit well in Nashville.
Yeah. Can you believe
well,
that?
I can see that. And I remember watching it because there was this story that said he was very upset when he got dealt away from New England. And I think that there was a little bit of a rough patch between him and Bill Belichick. Now, Belichick got up and gave a great speech that day, which was amazing that Bill Belichick gave a great speech. He was very funny. He was self-deprecating, and, he was great with Vrabel. But you're right. I mean, that was an amazing event to watch him, and he had the red jacket on. And I just said, he'll be the next coach of the Patriots. And all of those talk shows, and there are many back there, that was their topic, that here's your next head coach. Perfect guy, tough guy coming to the Patriots, with a legacy of having a lot of Super Bowl rings.
Yeah.
With the Patriots.
With them.
With the
And
Patriots.
then he's out in Tennessee. That doesn't come to fruition. They hired Mayo kind of right away.
Yeah.
And obviously they're happy about that.
Yeah.
But
well, he was a great Walsh Jesuit warrior, and I'm sure he'll help out here because he's a great guy. Wherever he's been, when he went in and helped Luke Fickell out at Ohio State, I mean, he close friendship, really tight. Felt that his buddy needed some help when Tressel left and everything was kind of chaotic down there in Columbus. He did a good, admirable job there, and then I thought, a great job in Tennessee.
Yeah,
I mean, they won some big games.
they were the number 1 seed. They went to an AFC championship.
Yeah.
They were, given that they were constructed differently than what you would consider many of the great teams to be constructed, with Ryan Tannehill, who played very, very well for them, but was not necessarily ever considered a top 8, 10, 12 quarterback in the NFL, and to be able to be that successful with that is very impressive. And I thought, I want to run this by you, because when I got the news, and we found out about this was as under the radar, hush hush as anything has been. We found out on the air, kind of live as it happened. And they noted that not only is he going to be working with Kevin Stefanski, and obviously we know his relationship with Jim Schwartz when Schwartz was working for him in Tennessee, but that he would be working a lot with Andrew Berry and wanting to kind of, I think, learn that side of the business as well. And it made me think, my theory on that was he was not happy when they traded A.J. Brown, and in many ways that kind of derailed what they were doing, it felt like, in Tennessee. And I think he's got the cachet to say, I'm going to choose my next spot, and this will allow him to either say, hey, I studied with Andrew Berry, I can do the GM part as well, or to find somebody here, as we have very many talented people, and Glenn Cook, who's gotten a lot of interviews, Catherine Raish, and say, okay, I'm going to take somebody that I know with me, and then that way that will never happen to me again.
Yeah. Well, and this is what makes the Berry Stefanski marriage so good. I mean, here that they finally got it right.
Yeah.
That it was a good fit. I mean, sometimes there was an odd marriage between general manager and head coach here. Who got hired first?
Quite.
A lot of times. But this one was a
little bit of an understanding.
And this one was quiet. I mean,
very much, but they wanted to work together.
Yeah, and
from
there
the
you have
inception.
it. But I understand that with Mike Vrabel. The other thing about Mike Vrabel, I remember this, and a great thing he did, he went back and nominated his high school coach at Walsh Jesuit for a very, very prestigious National Coach of the Year award, which I think he ended up winning. And it was due to the efforts of Mike Vrabel. He never forgot where he came from.
Yeah.
So now he's back where he came from.
Yeah.
I think that this is pretty cool. But
it's very cool.
It's interesting when you see these guys step away maybe for a year and how they really are continuing their education within an organization to be ready the next time. Now, sometimes guys do it in a television studio, right? Or as an analyst in a game, and then they become a head coach. Dick Vermeil was a great example. Did the college games for a long time and then hopped back in and won a Super Bowl. And I would think Mike Vrabel's career still has a lot of lines left on it.
Oh, yeah. And I can tell you, after running into him here in the building. He's still an incredibly impressive
big guy,
specimen.
isn't he?
Yes, he is an imposing figure, to say the least. And you mentioned kind of that being able to happen and the success we've had, kind of that relationship between Andrew Barry and Kevin Stefanski. But it's really kind of three people who have worked together so well. Paul DePodesta, along with AB and Coach Stefanski. Here's Jimmy Haslam on that trio.
You all know, because you're around it, NFL is a highly pressured situation. And the two of them, I can't imagine, and there may be other coaches and GMs that get along better than them, but I can't imagine two people in that situation that work together better than the two of them do. And I say this all the time, and Paul. I mean, the three of them work together extremely well. And so that makes our job much easier.
It's just fun to come to work with them. They're great to work with.
They are. They are great to work with. They work well together. They obviously are talented in their respective what they're trying to do. Build rosters, manage the salary cap, have the vision not only for this year but a few years out. And then Kevin Stefanski kind of piloting this ship, which he did captaining the ship, which he did a tremendous job, especially through very choppy waters, certainly last year. Jimmy Haslam was asked about the big one in Cleveland, right? Joe Flacco. What a magical run. Oh. He is not here. He's now in Indianapolis. Jameis Winston, the backup quarterback now for the Cleveland Browns. Jimmy Haslam was asked about that decision.
Joe Flacco came in and played well for us, and he's a great guy. He really
Terrific.
is. And it was interesting because you got to remember, Dee and I were with the Steelers when the Ravens were their big rival, and I've told him this, so I couldn't stand Joe Flacco. He was the backup, right? So to meet him and get to know he and his 4 or 5 kids and his wife was great. And it was great to have him with us. Here again, Andrew makes the decision, and there's multiple factors in terms of who was the best to bring in to be our number 2 quarterback, and he settled on Jameis. So we're excited about it. We wish Joe nothing but the best.
He's great.
And he got a nice contract.
And he did. He did.
Yeah,
and he
did.
deserved it.
Yeah.
Listen, last year is one of the most fun, special, certainly in my time, and you've been here obviously a lot longer than I have, seasons in Browns history, and you cannot tell the tale of that season without Joe Flacco and the magic that he brought.
Absolutely. It was thrilling.
Yes.
It was absolutely thrilling to watch it happen. And when it happened, it had to happen at that point in the season. That's when teams make their run, and a run was needed. And I just thought it was just captivating what he did. And Jimmy Haslam's right. Listen, those Steeler-Raven games were incredible. They were always the national game to watch. They put them at night. They put them at the 4 o'clock slot they put them on Monday night, Sunday night, whenever, because that was the rivalry. But the Joe Flacco record against the Browns was unbelievable. Wasn't he like 18-3 against the Browns?
Yeah, it was too much,
as he went through
including
the year.
a win as the Jet.
As a Jet, but a lot as a Raven. So to
17.
watch him do it. But the other thing I remember, one of the writers, I think it was Tony Grossi, after the Jet game, when they clinched the playoff spot, he got a hold of Joe's dad because Joe's whole family was in.
Yeah.
And Joe's dad said, now, mind you, this is a guy that was the MVP in the Super Bowl and won the Super Bowl. He said, I've never seen him have so much fun and be as happy as he was with this very isolated situation in Cleveland, because it was short, but yet it was wonderful, and he was having a ball. And you could see that even in those mic'd up sessions that the Browns would put, the sideline series that they did when those games coming down the stretch. He was having a ball that night against the Jets. He was on fire.
He had the best time of his life.
Yeah.
He's had the best time of his professional career, the best time being able to have his kids see that he could still play a little bit. And, his dad talked about the fact that, he had never had more fun. He also had never been more beloved. He was like, I am more beloved in Cleveland than I was with the Ravens when I won a Super Bowl for them, because that was, Ray Lewis and Ed Reed's team. And, and this was, he kind of had that. It was absolutely magical. He was such a great guy. I am so happy for him that he's doing what he loves. I'll never forget him. I consider myself very lucky that we got a chance to do that and to call those games.
It's unbelievable, wasn't it? Yeah.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Unreal.
Because I have to tell you, that day against the Bears, he wasn't having a great day.
No.
Okay, and they're down by 10. going into the fourth quarter. And really, folks, I mean, they needed all of those games. The good thing was they had that little home patch after the rough 2 games, the Denver Rams situation. But then they had those games. Jacksonville, the Bears, they needed those 2 games.
Yes.
And they're in trouble going into the fourth quarter. And he was fine. I mean, and he had a bumpy day that
thrown
day.
a pick six already.
And another interception that went down to the 1.
And then an interception at the goal line trying to hit Chief right after I think we got a special teams turnover.
Right.
And you're thinking like, oh, that's it. Down 17-7. That's it for the Browns. And then he hit Goodwin with a bomb. Then he had that unbelievable throw to Amari, which was
unbelievable.
Still hard to believe.
And then Njoku that got them down into field goal range.
Yeah.
Wow. You get goosebumps remembering it. I mean, he was just tremendous. I mean, that's a great thing. What a story. Our one of our arch rivals and a guy that had tremendous success against the Browns, and to come in and do it and get them into the playoffs, I mean, that's really special.
So special. And I think, honestly, we wish the playoff run had ended longer, but for Joe Flacco, it's kind of the perfect capsule. Like, you get to come in, be the hero. There's no drop-off. There's no decline, at least not in a Browns uniform, at least that we can see at this moment as he goes to the Colts. And so he'll be a Cleveland legend forever.
Yeah, he will. He is a Cleveland legend. Yeah, he is a Cleveland legend.
Who would have thought you'd ever would have said that? Well, a guy who certainly is a Cleveland legend, and we hope to get him back on the field as soon as possible. Nick Chubb, Jimmy Haslam talked about Nick Chubb's progress back from that devastating knee injury suffered week 2 in Pittsburgh.
There's nobody any of us would root harder for than Nick Chubb. And I think we're cautiously optimistic. And he is, I cannot tell you, they were telling me this morning or last night at dinner, Andrew or Kevin said he's in there at 5 a.m. in the hyperbaric chamber. I mean, that's just Nick Chubb. And so we're all pulling for him. We think he can do it. We hope he can do it. But it was a serious injury, as you all know. But I can't tell you how much we appreciate, and it symbolizes the kind of man he is by how hard he's worked.
Yeah, no surprise there. I mean, if you're ever going to bet on anybody to come back from this in record time, it's Nick Chubb, right?
I never asked you this, but I wasn't in Pittsburgh that night. You were doing the game. And I'm trying to remember now. That play probably was down by your booth?
So it was it was that end of the stadium.
Yeah, really close because that booth is pretty
farther side, far hash, but we're down there in that end zone. Yeah.
Did you know it was pretty bad when it happened?
So when I saw it happen live, the way that he went down, if you remember, he went down so we wouldn't have been able to see his legs, but we just saw his top go down.
Right.
And he went down so violently that when I could tell when he was on the ground and he was in pain, I thought maybe he had like a collarbone because it looked like he just really whipped onto his shoulder. And then we didn't know what was happening. And then I noticed him sitting down. They tried to get him, and he touched his knee. And then I said, oh, no. And within a split second of that happening, they showed the replay, I want to say in the stadium, and and you could hear, I think everybody in the stadium groan.
Yeah, one of those.
And I think I said oh my God. And then that was, you knew at that point, like, not good.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it wasn't. You didn't I think if we were on the other side of the stadium, maybe where you could have seen his legs, you would have had a better idea in real time. But as soon as the replay and they play, and I mean, I'll give the fans in Pittsburgh a lot of credit because they have a lot of respect for Nick Chubb, and I think everybody knew immediately how serious it was that they were chanting for Nick Chubb, which was not anything you expected to hear in a Pittsburgh stadium.
Well, remember in 2020. When the Browns were in Dallas and had that big win, he got hurt in that game. Now, that was a knee that he ended up missing like 3 or 4 games. 4 games. And but he ran off that night. But you're right. I mean, I'm watching it. I'm in the hospital watching it. And when he didn't get up like that, and he kind of banged it a little bit. Yeah. I just went, wow, this is bad.
No.
Really shaking. Because he means so much, and he is so loved. And that's cool that in that stadium that they respected that. But I think that would be across the NFL because he's that kind of player.
Agreed. I think
he's that kind of player. You can't. You maybe can root against him, but you can't root against him.
Correct.
Right?
Yes. Yeah, you're certainly rooting for his own personal success, even if not his team's success. But, hopefully Nick Chubb back sooner rather than later. And this is a team that really addressed that running back position, bringing in Naheem Hines, who can help with the return game. And we'll talk about that in a second because it's going to look a lot different.
Yeah.
And then also Deontay Foreman, who has been very productive whenever asked to really carry the football in the National Football League in a big 230-pounder.
And the other thing, Nathan, I love Pierre Strong.
Me too. I want more Pierre Strong.
I want
more Pierre Strong. All right. When we come back, we'll go go around the league. Some more news from the owners' meetings and great news about the Hall of Fame game. Stay tuned here. Cleveland Browns Daily brought to you by Ballybet. Ever thought about hitting a golf ball inside Cleveland Browns Stadium? Well, now's your chance, thanks to Upper Deck Golf. Friday, June 21st and Saturday, June 22nd, enjoy a unique VIP golfing experience while hitting tee shots from the Upper Deck down to custom greens on the Browns Stadium field below. For more information, go to upperdeckgolfing.com and reserve your tee time today. That's upperdeckgolfing.com. Nathan Segura and the voice of the Cleveland Browns, Jim Donovan, are going to go around the league. And good news, the Hall of Fame game is official, August the 1st, 8 p.m., The Houston Texans and the Chicago Bears will kick off the 2024 NFL season from Canton.
All right. There you go.
You knew the Bears. You had Julius Peppers, right? Devin Hester.
Yes,
right? He had some Bears connections.
Yeah.
Texans, Andre Johnson is going in, right, this year? So that would be the Texans connection there.
Fun event. I mean,
Yes, we did it last year. It's a lot of the people don't think you're going to see C.J. Stroud or don't think you're going to see
I don't think so, yeah.
Caleb Williams, I would guess most likely not, or Keenan Allen or DJ Moore, any of them.
That's right.
Yeah,
Caleb Williams. I mean, what do you think? No? Wouldn't you want to put him out there for a little bit?
I don't know. If he's the franchise, if you're not out, are you playing your offensive line? Are you playing your starters in that Hall of Fame game?
Right. Yeah.
You get 4 of them. So I don't know.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting.
I didn't think of that. You're right.
By the way, can we talk about we'll get to this rule change at some point on the show today. Can we talk about the fact that the Steelers went from Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph to Russell Wilson and Justin Fields for $1 million and like a 6th-round pick?
Unbelievable.
How's this happen?
I don't know. I don't know how they get in the playoffs every year, or at least in these last couple. At least in these last couple of years,
for
because
sure.
The play and the math looks bad, and then all of a sudden you turn on and you go, "All right, it's the Steelers and Bills today in the wild card weekend." I don't know how they do it, but they did it.
They lost to the Cardinals at home in the middle of the playoff run
decisively.
Yeah, and still made it somehow. It's
now I got to tell you, Nathan,
Yeah.
I am a Justin Fields
Me
guy.
too.
He frightened me.
Yes.
That day in Cleveland, and he definitely frightened me on that last play.
And he's gotten better every year. His
I think
completion
so.
percentages, all of his metrics, everything's been better every year. Nobody wanted him, so there's something maybe that they see that you and I don't. But I can tell you, I was sitting in that chair, and it was a Friday show, and at about 12:53, we're about to go off the air, and it came through that Kenny Pickett was being traded to the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah.
And I go, they're going to get him. I go, this is unbelievable. They're going to get him. And by the time we came on the air on Monday, Justin Fields was a Steeler.
So how do you think that works now? What do you think?
Well,
I mean,
Mike
first of all, with Russell Wilson.
He's got the pole position to be the starter.
Sure.
Look, if was Russell Wilson great last year? No. But if you were to take a quarterback and plop him on the Steelers with everything else that was the same, who's going to throw 22, 26 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think that's the number. Right.
And 6 picks. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be worse.
Right. Not at all.
No, I think, in fact, I would say that they're going to be quite a bit better. So I think it's going to work like this. I think you're going to get 1 year of Russ, and then as long as he is what he has been, and then you're going to get Justin Fields taking over, and we're going to say, how in the heck are we dealing with Justin Fields in the AFC North?
Right. Twice a year.
Twice a year.
Yeah,
and Lamar twice a year. And Joe Burrow.
Right. Yeah. An amazing division of quarterback play. Yeah.
Yeah. Too much.
They did it, and I'm fascinated with Russell Wilson coming here. He had just a horrible relationship
Sean Payton?
with head coach last year, to the point where he was out of it by the end of the year. So he had to get out of there, and I just didn't see that coming, that he would end up in Pittsburgh. And I remember during the season, I think Jason on the pregame show in one of our segments had, fact or fiction. Kenny Pickett will be the quarterback of the Steelers, and I think all of us, Sherrod and everybody that was participating, Tyvis, Andy Baskin, and myself, all said, well, that the Steeler way is they're so loyal, and they just ride it out, and they'll wait for him and get better around him, but they'll wait for him to get good. I never saw that ending so abruptly.
Boy, did it.
It did, yeah.
And what was wild about the situation to me, here's something that I'm struggling to get my head around. So they bring in Russell Wilson. They give him the veteran minimum because Denver's paying him an ungodly amount of money. And Kenny Pickett's so upset that he says, I need to be traded because I'm going to be the backup now.
Right.
Well, if you kind of looked at it, you'd say, okay, I'm going to learn from a guy who's won a Super Bowl, and then I'll probably take over the following year, and I still am only my 4th year, and I can maybe get this going. and said he demands a trade, and now he's backing up Jalen Hurts. He's not playing over Jalen Hurts unless Jalen Hurts is unable to play.
No way.
And not this year,
No
not
way,
next year, not
yeah.
2 years from now.
Yeah. And he needed some learning.
Yes.
I mean, he needed
He wasn't
some learning.
good.
Yeah, he was not very good. You're right.
That's the thing. We were sitting there, we're talking, oh, Ben's over. They're going to go on a downturn, and they misfire on a first-round quarterback and still somehow are sitting here with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. And granted, it's not peak Russell Wilson, but man.
Well, it will be interesting to see if he can revive himself and
I'd rather
play.
not.
I mean, really, at the end in Seattle,
No,
he wasn't
iffy,
great. Yeah,
but
yeah. I thought he was pretty good against us the day in Denver.
Yeah.
I mean,
Here's-
we didn't play him. We have not played him a lot. Now we will. But we have not played him a lot, but we have always had a difficult time with him.
Yeah, getting him on the ground.
Getting
Remember
him on
that
the
game
ground.
against Seattle
Yeah.
when we were up big at the end of the first half and led a huge comeback and beat us here in Cleveland. So here's what's so interesting about Russ, and I couldn't agree with you more. But the perception is right, and he went 6-8 that last year. His last 2 seasons in Seattle, 65 touchdown passes, 19 interceptions.
Wow.
His last year in Seattle, which where we would agree was, he was whatever, 65% completions, 25 touchdowns, 6 picks, and a quarterback rating of 103. Then he goes to Denver the first year, which was a disaster, with 60% completion, 16 touchdowns, 11 picks, quarterback rating of 84, which is the lowest of his career. Last year, 66%, 26 touchdowns, 8 picks, and a quarterback rating of 98. I mean, you put those kind of numbers with that defense and TJ
that's
Watt
it.
and Alex
Yeah.
Highsmith, like their running game,
their running
they're
game,
going to be just fine.
Yeah.
All right, when we come back, we're going to go through the offseason, get Jim Donovan's thoughts on the Browns' moves in free agency. It's coming up, hour number 2, Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Ballybet, a sports betting partner of your Cleveland Browns, now live in Ohio. Be a part of one of the most passionate fan bases in the NFL. Join Next Gen STM presented by Ticketmaster, the official waitlist of the Cleveland Browns. Being a Next Gen STM is the best chance to become a season ticket member in future seasons. Visit clevelandbrowns.com/nextgenstm to reserve your spot today. Nathan Zgura and the voice of your Cleveland Browns, Jim Donovan, with you here on Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Ballybet. Hour number 2. We're going to kick it off with some of your thoughts on the offseason, and we're going to start with what I think was the headline move, the trade, the acquisition of, and then the extension for wide receiver Jerry Jeudy.
Perfect. It was perfect.
I agree.
I think the way Andrew Berry does it is, we talked about how those two guys do their job, the head coach and the general manager, and how in sync they are. But I think what he does is really interesting. He trades. He gets a guy, trades, and then does the contract afterwards. I mean, free agency is very expensive.
Yep.
And a lot of times if you get into it and really get into it when the bell rings and you get the guy, so many times you end up with buyer's remorse because you've spent so much, and that guy just doesn't live up to it. But I think that you and I would both agree that the Browns were a little naked on one side in the wide receiver situation. I mean, you had Cooper over here, but there was always a project on the other side.
Yep.
Now, I thought Donovan Peoples-Jones, terrific kid.
Yep.
And I thought he was going to be the guy, but then they obviously felt differently, and they traded him. I remember, Nathan, we had that great day in Detroit against Buffalo when he caught the touchdown passes.
And great.
But his
family
mom
was
was there.
his
his
mom
family,
was,
and they were great people.
And
they were
best.
they were so excited. Anyhow, but I think when you looked out there and you saw it, and Cedric Tillman went in, but he's got to learn the game. And the Schwartz thing didn't work.
No.
So I think that they were a little bit tipped on one side of the field with Cooper, and Njoku made up for that in a lot of ways, but you needed another guy over there. You really did. And you don't have a first-round pick. So, go get a guy that they obviously liked a lot coming out of Alabama.
Yes.
Maybe at a trade deadline deal with Denver because it wasn't going well out there. They had their eyes on him. They've done their due diligence. It's a chance for him to get a fresh start with an exciting team. I thought it was a brilliant move. Much needed move.
Much needed. And he's a guy that went to Alabama and was a big admirer of Amari Cooper's, and now he's going to learn.
Isn't that why you went to Alabama?
It is exactly why you went to Alabama. So I feel like we're going to get whatever the best of Jerry Jeudy is, we're going to get that here. He's with his kind of idol/mentor now in Amari Cooper. Great route runner. First-round talent. A lot of people thought he was, can't miss coming out of Alabama. And, you look at his efficiency for his career, it's actually not that bad, about 9 yards a target. Just hasn't gotten the opportunities. And now all of a sudden you're talking about trotting out there when Nick Chubb's healthy. Deshaun Watson with Nick Chubb, David Njoku coming off of a Pro Bowl season, Amari Cooper coming off of a Pro Bowl season, Jerry Jeudy, and now Elijah Moore is your third, who – when was given opportunities, when, for example, Amari went down against the Jets and he had to be the number one against a very good pass defense, he was very good. I think 6 catches, 70 yards, and a touchdown in the first half. So I like where you're at now with the acquisition of Jeudy, and it reminds me a little bit of, given the extension, which now we've seen the money actually looks much better than the initial reports for the Cleveland Browns side of things.
Right.
That they pay guys like the Chief, and in this case Jerry Jeudy, who they believe will become something. They pay him before that. And then it turns out to look like a great deal after the fact if they do come through.
Absolutely. I remember on the Elijah Moore front, you came up to the booth and we're getting ready for the Jets game. We're all excited because there's the clinch possibility to get into the playoffs. And you came up to the booth and went, Cooper's a no-go. And you go, oh, because he had come off that incredible game in Houston, right? Record-setting game in Houston. Unbelievable. He was uncoverable. And, he had gone out for the pregame workout. It didn't go well, and it didn't go long. And you came up to the booth, and I go, you just still have that feeling about, gosh, this always happens to us. Something with the Browns is going to happen. And Elijah Moore And Njoku had an amazing game, but Elijah Moore really blossomed to what we thought he was going to be. And Flacco was so excited for him because it came against their old team, the Jets.
They were together.
So that was the Elijah Moore.
Yeah.
That's the guy.
And now you think
now
he's
you got this
be,
guy on the other side.
You got a lot of weapons now all of a sudden on this offensive side of the ball, and I think it is exciting. And I love they got Jeudy, somebody they were going after for quite some time. Staying on the offensive side of the ball, it's a new quarterback room. other than Deshaun Watson.
really is,
DTR
yeah.
coming back from his injury as well. They bring in Jameis Winston to be the backup, and we had a tremendous time interviewing him. He is quite charismatic.
He really is.
He really is. He's great to talk to.
I mean, he looked great.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, he did. He had a great trench coat on, or a long kind of a car coat. He looked fantastic. And he's been, productive. There's no doubt he can throw the football. We're moving to more of a shotgun type spread offense that he's very familiar with. He's still young, and I think understands, he mentioned multiple times when we talked to him about how he's here to, help Deshaun Watson. And think about Jameis Winston, the stature he had coming out of college. Yeah. Then you think about Deshaun, the stature he had coming out of college. These are guys who I think are going to be able to relate. They've had some issues that they have dealt with throughout their careers as well, not just on the football field, but certainly off. And so I think that's going to be a nice bond for them. And Jameis it was infectious, man. He was so positive and just so kind of uplifting. And I think that's when you hear the stories out of New Orleans, how he turned his life around, was really a valued member of that community down there.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that addition.
I just thought he was enjoyable.
Very.
I thought he was really enjoyable to look at, but he had a smile on his face. And, I mean, he knows the drill, and he knows the job.
Yes.
He knows what the job is here. And if called upon, and, you just hope Deshaun can put together a healthy year, absolutely. But, I mean, if called upon, you have to feel good. This guy he's played a lot of football in a very short amount of time. I mean, he's still, how old is he? Is he
29?
Yeah, I mean,
I think he's 29.
yeah. Gosh, I just remember the many times that when he won the national title at Florida State, and then the following year, I just remember him with Jimbo Fisher.
Yeah.
He just had such a up and down. Even during games, what a relationship they had. I mean, he had his moments of greatness and he had his moments of frustration, and it was really something watching him.
So Jameis is 30 years old, turned 30 January the 6th. The last time that he was a starting quarterback full-time in a season, led the NFL with 5,109 yards, averaged 319 yards a game. That also led the NFL. Threw for 33 touchdowns and 30 picks.
30 picks.
Well, I was going to say, in some ways, those numbers are a little bit like our Joe Flacco experience that we got a little bit last year, right?
Joe Flacco, yeah.
Huge, big plays. Also, some huge, big plays the other direction.
Some real head scratchers.
Yeah, but
right?
some beauty.
Go,
some beauty.
Gosh, what was Joe Flacco? What is Joe looking at there? But, I mean, then he would rebound, and you're right.
Man.
But his big plays outweighed those little head scratchers.
No doubt about it.
And I think that was the situation in Tampa too. You would just say, what was he looking at? We lost to them, didn't we? When he played against us?
2018.
Was Mayfield?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mayfield's first year
in Tampa. Yeah,
right.
In an overtime game.
Yeah, where it looked as though
we got a pick that should have won it.
You should have won it, and Baker took a sack, took us out.
Field goal,
they got the ball back, and the guy kicked like a. Didn't he kicked like a 58-yard field goal.
That was when I watched from the comfort of my home, as I recall, the year 2018.
Well,
Here we are, though, 2024. But, yes, I do remember that game quite well. Running backs, we talked about Deontay Foreman, Nyheim Hines a little bit, and I think Hines will play maybe a bigger role in the return game.
Game.
And then Deontay Foreman, 230 pounds, hammer. I was looking up his stats. 11 times in his career he's been given the ball 20 times in a game. He's rushed for over 100 yards in 7 of them.
Wow.
So he's a productive guy.
Boy, Nathan, we have tried to find a return guy.
Yes, we have.
God knows.
Not through lack of effort. We haven't even gotten to the field.
Yeah. I mean, Natson.
Yep.
I mean,
Jakeem
Grant. And what happened to him? What happened to him in training camp? I remember being on the sideline watching that day he got hurt in training camp in a passing drill. And then you and I, we were so excited to see him in Kansas City play. It was like... boom, like right away it happened.
Yep.
It was awful. That's the cruel part of the sport.
Yeah.
But we have tried. We have tried to find the next Cribbs.
Yeah. We've tried very, very hard, and hopefully
I think he would like to come back and play.
I think he would be great. Nyheim Hines, by the way, has 2 punt returns for touchdowns, 2 kick returns for a touchdown. Knows Bubba Ventrone from their time, obviously, together in Indianapolis. Knows Ken Dorsey from his time in Buffalo, and he was one who famously returned the opening kickoff after the Damar Hamlin scary situation
against New England.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So, and he was another great guy. We really got to talk to all these guys this year, which is unusual. But it was very impressive, very focused, and certainly wants to play a big role here. And then you flip over to the defensive side, Jim. Defensive line.
I loved what they did here.
Bring back Za'Darius. Bring back Mo Hurst. Bring back Shelby Harris. And then I like the signing of Quentin Jefferson, defensive tackle, coming off a career-high 6 sacks. He's had, I think, like 5 at least in 3 straight seasons. There's just a lot of talent now on that D-line.
And I just love the fact that they brought, the guys returning back because I liked them. Yes. I liked what they did. I liked what they did at big moments. And, that was just the defense and all was enjoyable. I know they had a rough ending. The whole team had a rough ending that day in Houston. But, for the most part, wow. And that's just a good thing that they're coming back. You're not having to introduce a lot of guys into a mammoth change to teach a system. They know the system. They know it works.
Yeah,
and they loved being a part of it.
So I was talking with Za'Darius, and so you think about Miles, Za'Darius, Obo, Alex Wright, and Isaiah McGuire all back. Your top 5 defense. He said
Alex Wright really came on.
Yeah, second 4 straight games to close the season.
Right.
And Za'Darius said, "I've never had that in my entire career." He said, "I think maybe in high school I had it 2 years in a row, but not in college, not in the NFL." So you bring all those guys back. You bring back Rodney McLeod, who we had, and if you missed it yesterday, seek out the podcast. Even for just the Rodney McLeod interview, it was that impressive. And he's another one of those veterans hungry. And, the theme that with Shelby and with Mo and with Za'Darius and with Rodney, they love this locker room. They love being together. They love coming to work together. It was a special, special place to be, and they wanted to stay a part of it.
Yeah, good to hear.
Yeah.
It really is. It really is. That's the whole thing. You could tell that was – and that poured out onto the field. You could just see that they were a very together bunch.
Linebacking room, we lose Sione Takitaki, but congratulations to him. He got paid very nicely to go play for the New England Patriots with Elliott Wolf, who was the one that loved Takitaki when we drafted him.
I remember the night they drafted him, and Elliott Wolf came down to the media room to talk about him. And I remember him saying that he had gone out to watch him. I think he was actually going to watch another player maybe in that particular game, but he remembers the sound of Takitaki hitting. He was a terrific player here. Great guy. Friend of this show, wasn't he?
Big friend of the show. Yeah, absolutely. Huge friend of the show. And, you lose him and you lose Anthony Walker Jr. out of that room.
Great
2 guys
leader,
that were great leaders, glue guys, blue collar, came to work, did it the right way.
Tough for Anthony the last couple of years.
The injuries.
Missed a lot of time.
So unfortunate, but he's going to get an opportunity down with the Miami Dolphins. But you bring in Jordan Hicks. Jordan Hicks, very productive player, was with Jim Schwartz in Philadelphia. Right. Rodney McLeod knows him very well. Total leader, same thing, but he's got 5 straight 100-tackle seasons. Great cover linebacker, so he brings some stability. Then you bring in the former first-rounder Devin Bush as well to kind of round out that room.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and of course the JOK thing is just when you add him to the mix, wow.
He's a superstar.
He is a superstar. Yeah. He is a superstar. And I know a lot of people wondered, was he going to become that in the NFL? He was a great player. He was an ad-lib. Player at Notre Dame, they just told him find the ball and go get the ball, and he could do that. Now the NFL, there's more responsibilities, and he had to learn those. But wow, did he come on last year? There weren't many that had a good game in Houston in the playoff game. Him and Kareem Hunt, I would say.
He was the best player on the field.
He was the best player either side.
Yeah, he was the best player on the field.
Yeah, he was amazing that day.
He was amazing really all season, and I think you got to give some credit to him, his development, his focus as he matured, his linebacker coach Jason Tarver, the guys in the room, and then also Jim Schwartz's defense, I think, got him back to doing a lot more what you talked about Notre Dame. Just go make plays.
Yeah.
20 tackles for a loss.
Yeah.
He was the only off-ball linebacker even close to that. I think the first one since Luke Kuechly to be in the top 5 in tackles for loss.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it was pretty good company to be in when you're there with Luke Kuechly. So, and then finally we'll wrap it up. Kind of a move that you bring back Corey Bojorquez. Cade York's going to get another opportunity, I think, to learn behind Dustin Hopkins, and he gave us one of the great memories in Carolina a couple of years ago.
Carolina, the field goal, what was it, 58?
58 yards.
58 yards to win that game when it looked as though Baker was going to get his revenge against us. Gosh, I root for him.
Me too.
How about
we saw him yesterday? It was great
how about
to see him.
during the preseason? I mean, the two of us are watching him in those games, especially in Philadelphia, and then the last one in Kansas City, where you were just hoping that he would be able to get rid of this, the yips that he had and be able to do it. And he just couldn't do it. And they gave him every opportunity. And I think team-wide, they were hoping it would work.
Of course.
but it didn't. But the guy they brought in was just
unbelievable.
He was automatic.
Yeah, he was
Dustin
unbelievable.
Hopkins was
And
automatic.
Maybe he's going to be able to learn from him. He hasn't really had that veteran kicker with him.
Yeah.
And so I think you're looking at he's got Dustin Hopkins under contract. He's the kicker. And then you got Cade York to hopefully maybe become the kicker that you draft him to be, which is your kicker of the present and future.
Do you think that's a part of their, the intel that they do to draft a guy? No, they drafted Cade York, and I know they put a lot into that.
Of course.
And he was the best kicker in college football. I mean, you went to every team, and they would say, "Hey, if you needed a kicker, this was the guy
when we drafted him."
So, I mean, do you think they go back to that and say, "Listen, maybe we can just get that going"?
Yeah, we know the talent's in
We
there.
know it.
We gotta get it out of him, and
Yeah.
so hopefully we can do that. It was great to see him, as I said yesterday, in here, and certainly wish
Is he
him
happy to be
success.
back?
Very happy to be
good.
back. Yeah,
Good.
When you start your career off in a town like Cleveland with a moment like that, which he did, which many people set your call and my sound to the soundtrack of the Titanic, which is an unbelievable moment. He became a little bit of a Cleveland legend, right, in that moment. And so truly, and then unfortunately, this town can be tough on you when things are not going as well either. And so now he gets a chance at redemption, and I think everybody certainly likes that. All right, when we come back, our great friend Charles Davis from the NFL Network and CBS Sports joins us via the Twisted Tea Hotline. That's coming up next here on Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Ballybet. Oh, what a treat here on Cleveland Browns Daily. Nathan Zagura, the voice of the Browns, Jim Donovan, and we go to the Twisted Tea Hotline, brought to you by Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea, an official sponsor of the Cleveland Browns. Keep it twisted, Cleveland, because we're going to talk to our great friend, Charles Davis from the NFL Network and CBS Sports, who joins us now via that Twisted Tea Hotline. And don't forget, you can catch Charles in the NFL Network coverage of the 2024 NFL Draft live from Detroit, April 25th to the 27th. Charles, what a treat. Great to talk with you. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. It's always good to hear your voice, Nathan. Hope everything's going well, and I hear you with the legend today.
Yeah, that's right. We've got the legend here.
I have to say, Charles, thank you so much. Charles wrote me the most beautiful note that about, when I was going through my situation, and it really hit me in the heart. Like, I got so many nice wishes from people, but it was a beautiful note. Charles, thank you so much. It meant a lot to me.
Oh, it's the least I can do. I mean, you mean a lot to a lot of people.
Oh, thank you.
And we don't just treasure you because you're great at what you do. You're treasured because of who you are.
Oh, thanks so much.
I'm really glad to hear that, and it's wonderful to hear your voice today.
Thanks.
Charles, you're the best.
Yeah.
He really is. People ask me all the time, "Oh, what's the Charles? The nicest guy you've ever met?" Like, imagine that, and that's Charles Davis for you. So, Charles, this is a fun time of year for you, right? As you I'm going to ask you to look two directions. Look back a little bit at the wildness of another unbelievable season, especially the AFC, the dominance of that conference, and in particular, the Kansas City Chiefs continues, and then you're going to be looking forward to the draft. But as you look back, what kind of stood out to you about this season? And you and I do such a great job, as I've shared with you, when I get an opportunity to hear you on the call. You guys are great.
Well, thank you. You're awfully kind, and right back to you guys, because you know how much I bug you during the season as I'm trying to keep abreast and learn teams, and I greatly appreciate both of you helping me out. But for me, looking back on the season was just the uncertainty at every turn. And when I say uncertainty, maybe that's the wrong word. Maybe the intrigue, maybe the mystery. Right? There was a little mystery to this past season, because we started it, of course, with the Super Bowl champs getting to host. We knew going into that game that Detroit, we expected them to be good. Now, here's your measuring stick. And then, of course, what did we have? Chris Jones holdout. Travis Kelce doesn't play. But the Lions win the game on the road, and we're off and running, okay? The Lions fulfilled their promise as expected. Kansas City, we know at the end they hoisted the Super Bowl trophy. But let's face it, guys, about 6 weeks out of the end of the season, 5 weeks out, somewhere in that neighborhood, definitely on Christmas Day.
Yes, that's right.
There was a ton of doubt.
Yeah.
There were a ton of doubt out there about this team. They couldn't score as consistently on offense. All of a sudden, they were a defensive team who could run the football or tried to run the football. We didn't see any, for lack of a better word, consistency in their play. And so now they look vulnerable. Like, if you'd asked me Christmas Day, I would have told you, Kansas City, we know is going to make the playoffs, but they're not going to win the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm pretty sure I said it. So that was a big part of what was going on. Then on the NFC side, San Francisco looked like they were so dominant, went through their 3-game lull. You guys had something to do with that, if I remember
P.J. Walker.
correctly. And then they got back on the beam. But then our crew did a San Francisco at Arizona game where San Francisco won by about 20, but they didn't play to their standard. And Arizona ran the football on them. And all of a sudden, everybody's like, hey, they're vulnerable. And if Detroit had kept running the football in the playoffs, I don't know that we get San Francisco in the Super Bowl.
Absolutely.
So it was that kind of a year, right, guys? It was that kind of a year where there were so many things, and I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the AFC North, which is always if you're a pro wrestling fan, you understand this. This is a stretch.
I am.
Every game is a stretcher match.
Yeah.
Every game is a loser leave town match. Every game is a brass knuckles match. Tape fist, whatever they did, whatever they wanted to use, that's what the AFC North was. And it always felt like someone was kicking a field goal to beat someone. And it was that type of a year. And what Cleveland did to stay afloat, to stay abreast, to be relevant, to finish 11-6, I think is reflected by Mr. and Mrs. Haslam now, from what we hear, extending the contracts of Kevin Stefanski, the head coach, and Andrew Berry, the GM, because I thought they did yeoman's duty last year.
They did. Charles, Everything, though, as we go forward now into year 3 with Deshaun Watson and where he is and what we can forecast, and it's so because I think Nathan would agree, as we've watched him, we've only seen snapshots because there were 6 games, in that first year because of the suspension and then the injuries, and then we're left with that tantalizing game in Baltimore, that second half where he went 14 for 14 and they win, and then boom, 24 hours later he's done for the remainder of the year. So where are you with Deshaun Watson in trying to revive his career and physically then, maneuver to lead this team and to kind of restore himself, in the quarterback talk?
Yeah, I'm in limbo, to be frank with you, because we hit the year before he left Houston. Remember, he sat out.
Right.
Okay, so he sits out. Then the trade happens, right? Everything goes down, and he has the 11-game suspension. But people keep forgetting that in an 11-game suspension, he had to be away from the team for a lot of that. So by the time he came back, now he's going to play down the stretch. There's rust, because essentially 2 seasons of rust now that you have to work off of. Then he comes back, and he has the entire offseason, the entire preseason. But there are bumps along the way. He's got the shoulder thing. He's got this. He's got that. And to your point, that second half at Baltimore, that's when we said, that's why they went and got him, right?
Right,
and
exactly.
I think there was optimism on all fronts that, okay, now we'll start to get consistency to go with it. We'll get these types of performances each and every week, but lo and behold, 24 hours later, as you pointed out, he's out for the season. He could not have gone out on a higher note. He could not have gone out more of a warrior, to use the term that we use a lot in the NFL.
Right.
And now, once again, it is potential interruptus.
Yeah.
So now we've got to find out, because now we've got another season that's incomplete. This is the 3rd straight season where he doesn't get a complete season in.
Right.
What are we going to get next year? I'm leaning towards the positive side on it. I think the way he finished leaves a great taste in their mouth. But let's face it, guys, he's got to come out of the gate and be good right from the beginning. And you understand why management said, Joe Flacco, probably a good idea that you ply your craft elsewhere. Because could you imagine Joe Flacco sitting on the bench behind him and he doesn't play well early?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes. That would be Cleveland Brown Stadium would be it wouldn't be a hospitable home environment at that.
Yeah, I think we'd be turning the crowd mics down on the broadcast.
Right, exactly. Turn those things down. Charles, a quick question about maybe our big offseason acquisition, Jerry Jeudy. What did you think of him coming out of Alabama? What do you think of him today? And then the fact that he's going to go into a receiver room with the guy that he idolized, really the reason that he went to Alabama, Amari Cooper.
Yeah, remember he came out of Alabama the same time as Henry Ruggs, and now we know about the issues that Ruggs caused.
Sure.
And saying issues doesn't even come close to it, because someone lost their life, their prized pet lost their life by absolute recklessness. But ranking them coming out, I had Jeudy ahead of Ruggs, and Ruggs may have been the fastest of all those receivers in that grouping, but I thought he was the one on the bottom of that grouping. I thought Jeudy had more polish to him, more better route runner, a little bit more of game savvy that I thought when I watched. Ruggs was such a pure speed guy. You understood why Mark Davis fell in love with him, because of the DNA of Al Davis.
Of course.
Right? That's what the Raiders wanted.
Right.
I mean, let's face it. Henry Ruggs was shades of Warren Wells, Cliff Branch. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
You name it. James Jett, every guy that they ever brought in there to be that speed guy. Well, Jeudy, I thought, had more to him, but he's been a victim of inconsistent quarterback play, for one thing, in Denver. He's also been a victim of some injuries while he was in Denver as well. You get him healthy, you get him in the right room. I think he's in a great one with Amari Cooper leading the way, showing you how to be a pro each and every day. Sometimes you just need that new place, that new look each and every day. And I'm really optimistic about Jerry Jeudy going there. I really am, because I do think that the Browns are going to want to be able to play a little more wide open at times, because when you play, I always equated to basketball, guys. When you play half court all the time, remember when Hubie Brown was the great coach with the Knicks and Bernard King and crew, and Hubie called every set, And every time down court, he was calling a set, and usually it was for Bernard to score and all. But it's a slog, man. You've got to be precise on every one of them. You've got to maximize those sets, the whole deal. They got no run-outs, no easy baskets, no exhales. The Browns are going to want a few more of those exhales because it is hard going to turn and hand it, create third and short, pick it up all the time, 3rd and 7, pick it up. They want to get past that and have a few of those that get some of these defenders to back off a little bit and find some space for whoever's going to end up ultimately running the football and find Deshaun Watson for some of those throws that he can throw to Njoku inside and right on down the line.
Charles, you know, when Flacco did his magic in that run here at the end of the year, it was kind of an old-fashioned offense that the Browns went back to.
Yep.
You know, drop back in the pocket, play a little beautiful play action, and he'd hit the big plays. And it was really kind of like turning the page and going back and watching that offense. Do you ever think that defenses now will get up to speed on these spread offenses that the NFL is starting to really, be a part, live with, and they solve that spread offense, and we would go back to kind of an old-fashioned offense?
That's a great question. It's one that I pose mentally a lot, and I pose it to coaches a lot. The mentality of being able to do the two things is what coaches always seem to kind of stall on a little bit when they talk about it. And when I say stall, they would love to be able to say, you know something, let's play the way you just described. But when push comes to shove and we need it, let's line up and knock someone off the ball. It's almost like if you can't commit to doing the knocking people off the ball consistently all the time, it makes it more difficult. So that's why people are struggling with this. Plus, let's face it, you guys have seen it in the draft all the time. JOK, is he a linebacker in old school football? Or is he a strong safety?
He's probably a safety.
Yeah.
Yeah,
good point.
This is what we're playing with all the time. This is what we're playing with all the time now. And that's not a knock on him. He's playing awfully well in today's system. But in the old days, God, you guys both remember. I mean, heck, in your division, there was a guy named David Fulcher.
Oh, that's the Bengals, the big, wow.
Okay, you remember Kenny Easley up in Seattle.
Yeah, right.
Who was the guy that you guys drafted? Who's that big safety that you had?
Eric Turner? Would it be Eric Turner?
Eric Turner.
Yeah,
Eric Turner.
That's such a
Eric
sad
Turner was a monster.
Great player.
Right?
Oh.
Remember Tim
McDonald?
Tim McDonald?
Yes. Yeah.
Cardinals.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lewis Oliver.
Oh, my
I mean, we were talking plus-size jumbo safeties.
That's right.
That in today's football would all play linebacker. But, of course, back then, LaVon Kirkland was 300 pounds playing linebacker. So it's a different game. It has changed in such a way that more the water bugs are out there running around and playing and making really good plays.
Right.
And not many people, to your point, have said, we're just going to line up and beat you up and make you pay for being smaller. Baltimore comes to mind. Cleveland likes to do it under Kevin Stefanski. I mean, they would line up if you have the backs to do it. They would like to do it. The Niners, one thing about Kyle Shanahan, everybody knows how wide open they are. He will gladly run it 25 times in a row if you let him.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
he did it here.
That run
he did
to
it
the Super
here.
Bowl with Garoppolo.
Right.
Yeah.
Remember the run to Super Bowl with Garoppolo?
Right.
Remember the two playoff games that they played? He didn't throw it 10 times in either game. That's old school football.
Right. Yeah.
There's just not many people who are willing to commit to it and stay. And when I say not just commit to it, stay with it.
Yes.
Because a lot of teams, hey, we're going to run it, we're going to run it, we're going to run it. Nathan knows this well. You see it all the time. You talk to teams, you see them, oh, we're going to run it. The first 3rd and 3, they're throwing the football.
Yeah, absolutely. Shotgun, empty,
Boom,
pass.
Yeah, empty, yeah.
Charles,
you're down on the goal line inside the 2 and you're going gun. I mean, it just changes. People talk about it, but who really commits to it?
well, listen, the Browns last year had a package where we went goal line at the 50. We would just go goal line formation in the middle of the field, and it actually worked pretty well. Got a touchdown to Chief off of it.
It worked,
some big runs.
darn well, didn't it?
Yes,
It did.
did.
It actually
Yeah.
it worked quite
darn
well. Charles, help us understand something, because I was a couple of Fridays ago, I saw the news Kenny Pickett was being traded to Philadelphia, and I immediately put my head in my hands and I said, they're going to get him, aren't they? And sure enough, by the time I returned to the radio on Monday, Justin Fields was a Steeler. I have a lot of respect for Justin Fields. I think he's a great talent. He's improved every year he's been in the league. Jim feels the same way.
Yeah, I loved him.
Help us understand, because you have a much better eye for this, mind for it, and connections, I'm sure. How is Justin Fields available for a 6th-round pick? I just don't even – I can't get my head around that, and now I fear that we're going to have to deal with him with the Steelers for many years.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to deal with him. Everybody thinks it's a 1 year. He works behind Russell Wilson. It might not even be a year. Okay, depending on how the season goes early, he could very well be in there. And the way Pittsburgh has gotten back to playing, I think you started to recognize the Pittsburgh you guys knew 3, 4, 5 years ago. I mean, the crazy part for me is going into a season, and I've done it since I came over to CBS, where every year Pittsburgh is near the bottom of the league in running the football.
Yep.
You know how strange that is to look at? What?
Yep.
But last year, the second half of the year, Najee Harris found his mojo.
Yeah,
it's almost like he woke up one day and said, hold on a second, Jalen Warren is beating my time.
Let
me get it back together.
Yeah.
And so now they've got the 1-2 punch. The offensive line solidified enough that they started knocking people off the ball a little bit and creating creases, and they got back to running it. So now what are they going to want to do? Continue to run it, throw off a play action, and by the way, you got 2 quarterbacks now in Wilson and Fields who operate the play action very well because the big arm throwing over the top. I think we're going to see the Steelers try and add some more receivers because they got rid of Deontay Johnson. Pickens is the one there, and he's mainly their speed threat right now.
Right.
They're going to have to add a few more because if you're going to throw it off a play action, as you guys know, you want to throw it to hurt people. You don't want to throw checkdowns off a play action. You want to throw it downfield. And that's what I think is going on. Now, to your point, why was he available for a 6th-round pick? Who's available for big money these days anyway? You guys may have made the last big quarterback transaction that way because Lamar Jackson was up for grabs and no one wanted to seriously get involved in the bidding.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys gave up big numbers in order to get Deshaun Watson. Look around the rest of the league and see what guys are going for. It is Kenny Pickett. They didn't get a whole lot of deal for Kenny Pickett. He was a former first-round pick. You noted what they got for Justin Fields. The Jets are trying their best to get Zach Wilson anywhere, and no one's offering anything.
True.
So it's a very strange market.
Yeah.
I know they think it's a big quarterback market this year in the draft in terms of that. So maybe that's keeping it depressed a little bit. But former first-round picks are going in the 6th round, and that really throws me.
It throws
That's
me.
Just where
I don't
we
get
are
it.
right now. I really don't know. I really don't understand it. I haven't figured that part out. But I think part of it, too, is how many of them have gone to another team to be the prohibitive starter?
Right.
Yeah.
See, by the time they made the deal for Fields, they'd already made the deal for Russell Wilson, so he was going in to be number 2.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing to me that I always thought was maybe a little damning is that his offensive coordinator in Chicago is now with the Raiders and would rather have Gardner Minshew than Justin Fields. So maybe there's something more that we know. Charles, we appreciate.
There might be something more. There might be
something more there.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Charles, love having you on. Appreciate the time.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your kindness to my partner, Jim Donovan, as well.
Listen, the kindness has been sent to me tenfold. It's the least I can do. You guys take care of yourself, all right?
Thanks,
All right.
Charles.
The great Charles Davis. You can catch him on NFL Network, providing live coverage of the 2024 NFL Draft from Detroit, April 25th to the 27th. So much more to come. Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Ballybet.
You're up.
All right, welcome back to Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Ballybet, a sports betting partner of your Cleveland Browns, now live in Ohio. I told you we have so much more to come, and that is the Grift Fact of the Day.
Go ahead, Griff, go.
Fact of the day, fact of the day, fact of the day. It's the Griff Fact of the Day.
So this past Sunday, Nathan McKinnon from the Colorado Avalanche extended his home point streak record to 34 games.
Wow.
He not only set the Colorado
1 minute,
franchise record for the most in a single season, but he also set the second longest streak in NHL history. He now sits right behind the great one himself, Wayne Gretzky, who owns that record at 40 games. If McKinnon surpasses this record, he would only take one of 61 current NHL records
30.
Wayne Gretzky currently holds.
How about that?
That is rare air.
That is rare air to the great one.
Air.
61 records, not too
Bruce,
bad.
I got a hockey one. I go, well, Donovan will appreciate it.
I love it.
He
love
loved
it.
Well, loved being with you.
I had
great
a great
to see
time.
you. Yeah,
15.
it was a blast.
I think we're all warmed up and ready to go.
We're ready to go. Yeah, good thing we don't have to start at the Hall of Fame game, though. We'll take an extra week there.
Amen.
All right, the next level is next. Thanks for listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland.